Welcome back to Major Intonio's presentation of 13 Days, The Chronicle of an Escape from a German Prison, by John Caunter. Chapter 6, I Meet Fox and Blank.
The fact that this bridge was left behind made me feel quite elated, and I continued along a lane in a westerly direction with full confidence in my disguise and my evidently unsuspicious appearance generally. The lane ending in a field made me take to working across country. There were quite a number of Germans scattered about making hay. I had to go very cautiously so as to avoid meeting anyone face to face, as they might have asked me awkward questions relating to my work, etc. I also could not walk across fields with long grass in them by day without risking causing suspicions in the minds of any farmer who might see me, as the Germans themselves are very careful not to damage any crops in these times. And now happened the most remarkable thing that could well have fallen to the experience of anyone outside a novel. I was walking along a hedge very slowly, watching a German in the distance, when suddenly I thought I heard my name being spoken very clearly and distinctly. Again I heard it, and this time I was certain, and immediately thought that I was imagining it and that I was really going mad. I was told afterwards that I clutched my head with both hands. It was an awful shock to hear this, after not having seen anyone or been with anyone who knew me for 2.5 days, and having crossed 2 rivers and got miles from the camp in which my only acquaintances and friends in Germany were locked up. I turned round, and then I heard it again coming out of the hedge, and not only my name this time, but an exceedingly English sentence which told me that I was a something fool, and that I was to come back. I promptly did so and found Major C. Fox, DSO, and Lieutenant Blank lying at the bottom of the hedge. I at once joined them, and I naturally thought that all the officers from the camp had escaped and were spread far and wide over Germany, and that I had found a couple of them without being unduly lucky. However, that was not the case. Fox and Blank had escaped 16 hours after I did, but while I had been hung up between the ambush and the first bridge for 4 hours, they had pushed ahead and crossed both rivers and got to their present hiding place at daybreak. It was a great relief to have somebody with whom to talk, and we set to and discussed details in low whispers. I then found out that I had not been missed at roll call the night I had hidden in the tin office. Fox told me his adventures, and I gave him an account of mine in exchange. Again, our luck was well to the fore. On examining our supplies of food, etc., I found that Fox had lost nearly all his biscuits and chocolate in the crossing of the Aller, which they had had to negotiate by swimming a raft across. This had got swamped, as its buoyancy was poor, naturally with disastrous consequences to much of the perishable food they had taken with them. I had got a good number, and so would be able to supply them, and in exchange they gave me other things. My compass was a good one, theirs poor, whereas my map was exceedingly bad, and theirs quite good. We found that we had both the same ideas of the route to be taken towards the frontier. The Germans had captured 3 other lots of escapers in the district around Osnabrück. Forest guards were active in the woods in this district, and this had decided both of us on our line before we met. Another fact, which made us the more sure which route we should follow, was the nature of the ground, as shown by the maps. The country which we eventually traversed is shown as marshy, and we had both decided that the great drought in Germany this summer would have dried this up to a very large extent, and we hoped that the Germans might not have taken this fact into consideration in allocating guards, so that this district would be more lightly watched than others. As a matter of fact, the maps exaggerate the marshes, and I should think that even after really wet weather, it would be possible to follow the same line. The one disadvantage to this joining up of parties lay in its greater visibility and the loss of its elasticity, owing to the fact that we were now 3, whereas 2 is the ideal number. It is naturally more difficult for 3 to dive into hiding immediately on sighting a German than it is for 1 or 2. However, the pros easily outweighed the cons. While we were thus talking, we got rather a scare. A man on a horse came along the road and stopped immediately opposite the patch of brambles in the midst of which we lay. The horse began tearing at the leaves of a small tree, thereby making a noise which seemed to us cowering under cover, as if it might be caused by the man trying to force his way into our hiding place. We lay absolutely still, but we felt very uncomfortable, especially as the contents of our bags were mostly strewn about the ground drying. We should never have had time to collect our belongings together and bolt if an intrusion resulted in our hiding place being exposed. However, after 2 or 3 minutes of suspense on our part, the horse moved on down the road and we breathed again. Up to this time, I had been exceedingly sparing in what I had eaten. In fact, I had overdone my economy in this respect, as I had felt a bit weak once or twice that day. The other two had fed well up till then, and when I saw what they intended to eat that evening, I also increased my ration. From this time onwards, we usually had a pound of food each per day. This we intended to augment when possible. The details of Fox and his companions' adventures are outside the scope of this narrative, but the broad facts which must be included in order to account for their presence in the hedge are as follows. On Wednesday afternoon, 20th June, they had left Schwarmstedt camp with a fatigue party detailed for tree felling, disguised as British soldiers. The Germans, of course, did not realize that 2 of the party were really officers, but they were naturally bound to find out the deception which had been practiced on them on the return of the fatigue party to camp. The fatigue party broke up and scattered about while working at their tree-felling job, and it was not possible for the German escort to keep a watch on all and every soldier at the same time. Accordingly, these 2, nicely judging their chance, slipped away when the Boches were looking in the other direction. It did not take them long to get some distance away, and that night they approached the River Aller with the object of effecting a crossing. On nearing the railway bridge, they had discovered an ambush waiting for them, and consequently cleared away from that area. Striking the river some distance upstream, they made a rough raft from wooden palings, and putting their food and clothes on it, swam it across. It was here that Fox discovered that his companion was far from being a strong swimmer. Therefore, Fox, who had not entirely recovered from the injuries he had received in a previous attempt to escape by jumping from a train, had to swim the raft backwards and forwards several times by himself until all the food and clothing had been transported across. The raft was not a large one or very buoyant, which resulted in much of the food being destroyed. Fox also assisted Blank to cross, so had plenty of swimming to do. After crossing this river, they had pushed rapidly on and crossed another by a bridge without apparently getting into any trouble. They reached their hiding place during the early hours of Thursday morning and had remained there all day, drying their goods and chattels.
This concludes today's reading of 13 Days, The Chronicle of an Escape from a German Prison, by John Caunter. Join us also the day after tomorrow for the subsequent part. Subscribe to Major Intonio's channel. Thank you for listening, and so long.